and below the soil. Some specific consequences of industrial agriculture are listed here. It erodes the soil, evaporation happens very quickly in the soil, huge loss of biodiversity and soil fertility, among many other things. So regenerative agriculture is an alternative system that emphasizes working in symbiosis with nature rather than against it. There's a lot of focus on building healthy, nutrient-dense topsoil with thriving microbe communities. There are many benefits to a regenerative agriculture system, including carbon sequestration, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute, but is super promising. I'm going to go into more detail about the 3 principles of regenerative agriculture that I think are the most important, but they are by no means inclusive of all of the principles of this movement. Okay, so just to quickly explain how carbon sequestration by soil works. So a huge benefit of regenerative agriculture is its potential to sequester atmospheric carbon into the soil. So as you can see in this graphic, and probably already know, plants absorb carbon through photosynthesis from the atmosphere. So some of that carbon goes directly into the soil through the roots of the plants, and some of it is embodied in the physical structure of the plant. As the plant dies and the soil is cultivated, the carbon embodied by the plant itself becomes trapped in the soil as its organic matter decays and is processed into the soil bed. So does that make sense to everybody? Cool. It's like a huge benefit. So I just wanted to make sure we were all clear. Okay, so now to get into the first and arguably central principle of regenerative agriculture, no-till. In healthy soil, communities of microorganisms, fungi, nematodes, earthworms, and other creatures provide many benefits, like breaking down organic matter, releasing nutrients, aerating the soil, improving drainage, and even removing some pollutants like heavy metals. Tilling destroys these soil communities and the benefits they provide. Tilling also releases carbon trapped in the soil, causes soil to dry out faster, and causes significant erosion. This results in more water needed for irrigation, the use of chemical fertilizers to replace nutrients, and poor air quality from eroded particles that get blown up by the wind. By disturbing the soil as little as possible when planting, these consequences are substantially reduced. So regenerative agriculture advocates for either doing targeted digging when you're planting or using technologies like seed drills that just poke a tiny little hole into the soil instead of overturning the entire soil bed to plant. Another important principle of regenerative agriculture is the use of cover crops. Cover crops are beneficial plants that are grown between primary crops and on inactive fields. The idea here is to have as little soil exposed as possible. Often, cover crops are chosen for a specific purpose, like to increase the nitrogen content of soil. Nitrogen fixers are a really, really huge class of cover crops. They also shade and protect the soil, which reduces soil moisture loss to evaporation and helps control erosion. And again, the potential to sequester carbon through the plant growth is huge here. So the final principle of regenerative agriculture that I'm going to touch on today is crop rotation. Regenerative agriculture advocates for changing the location a crop is grown each season. There are many reasons for this. Different plants take up different nutrients from the soil. If one plant is grown in the same place for too long, its preferred nutrients become depleted in that spot. Rotating the locations of plants, keeping in mind which nutrients they use, allows the soil to recharge these depleted nutrients. Changing locations each season also confuses pests and helps mitigate disease. Crop rotation is basically not practiced at all in the industrial agricultural system, which means a lot of chemical fertilizers and pesticides have to be used. So all of this sounds super reasonable, right? So why isn't regenerative agriculture practiced on a larger scale? Unfortunately, there are many roadblocks in the agriculture system making it difficult. The upfront investment, both in terms of time and money, are pretty significant. Mass industrial monoculture operations have depleted the soil so much that it will take years of cultivation to restore the soil to a healthy level. And then during this transition time, crop yields will likely decrease in the short term. And then in the US, we have federal subsidies supporting many monoculture crops, which de-incentivizes farmers from converting to a regenerative approach. Regenerative agriculture has never been practiced at the scale necessary to support our food supply chain, and there are questions about its feasibility without increasing the cost of food. But despite these challenges, I do truly believe that regenerative agriculture is the future. Industrial agriculture practices just are not sustainable. And as regenerative agriculture becomes more mainstream and its benefits become more obvious, these roadblocks will be surmountable. So I'd just like to open it up for questions or comments or just a discussion about this. Let me stop sharing my screen here and we'll return.
I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, that was awesome. Thank you so much. It's so well put together, and